My name is Andy Purvis. I am Director Sustainable Manufacturing at the World Steel Association. I am delighted to welcome you to the fourth of a series of 5 webinars we have been running and will be running this year with Draeger in support of World Steel Day for Safety and Health, and really focused on the risks of gassing and asphyxiation. We've covered a number of topics as we've gone through this series of webinars. Today, we're going to be talking about risks of gassing and asphyxiation during maintenance work. In a moment, I will hand over to Team Draeger to take us through the presentation, but we very much would like this presentation to be interactive. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask, we will make as much time available as we can at the end of the presentation to ask those of the Draeger team. So if you have questions, you can type them in at any time using the Q&A function. That's probably better than chat. So if you use the Q&A function to ask any questions, we have a little bit of time allocated at the end, and hopefully we can have a discussion around some of those topics that you raise. So without further ado, I will hand over to a familiar face at Draeger, Oliver Steinman, who's been our presenter or host for most of these webinars so far. Oliver, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for this warm welcome. And it's a pleasure for us to be here with you today. A warm welcome from our studio here in Lübeck, in the north part of Germany. So we are happy to have you all. Thank you for your participation. And so my name is Oliver. I'm part of the global marketing team at Draeger. And I'm very happy that I'm not here all alone today, but I have a colleague of mine here with me. It's René, and some of you already might know him from the last session we had about the focus of confined spaces. It's René Krüger, and for those who missed you, René, just give a short introduction of yourself.
Yes, thank you, Oliver, for your warm welcome, and always a warm welcome from my side. My name is René. I'm a product manager and responsible for the electrochemical sensors in the mobile gas detection devices. There's also one instrument that's called XPIT. It's a special device for volatile organic substances to measure them. I'm a safety engineer and working in the product management mobile gas detection. And in the following slides, I'd like to tell you something about the gassing and asphyxiation.
Great. Thank you. Great to have you here. And there might be some of you who haven't been in touch with Draeger yet. And for those of you, there will be a very short presentation about some facts and figures. So first of all, why are we here? In industrial applications, we have 2 main core competencies, and that's on the first hand, the detection of gases by different sensor technologies. And the second is the protection of the lung with breathing protective equipment, so like mask, SCBAs, airline systems. Together we bring about 16,000 colleagues here in our organization with a net sales of about 3 billion euro. It's a family-run company. So you can see here in the picture on the upper part, that's the office of Stefan Draeger in the 5th generation. It's our CEO. We are listed at the stock exchange and located in Lübeck. But we might also be quite close to you. And that's what you see on this map. And here you see our headquarters, of course, production sites, logistics centers, and a sales and service location might be already quite close to you. Okay, so that's briefly all for the moment. And I think now it's time to have a look at the details about our topic today. Some risks of gassing and asphyxiation in the special application of maintenance work. And that's the part where I would like to say good luck and see you in a second back.
Thank you, Oliver. Yes, again, a very warm welcome. And I missed a few words for my person in the last time. So I worked as a project leader 10 years for Draeger and did a lot of turnarounds in the oil and gas industry, the petrochemicals, and also a bit in the steel industry. So I used all of our gas detection systems, instruments in the last years. And that's one of the reasons that I'm very happy to give you a few words about our topic today, maintenance work. And in the first part, I'd like to tell you something about where we come from, what are the hazards, what are the risks, and why there are some government rules to hold maybe value levels and so on. So, hazard and risks. Maintenance work. Maintenance work is very important for all the steel industry plants and sites. And of course, the safety is the priority number one. We're talking about Vision Zero and that nobody should get hurt or harmed or whatever. So in the maintenance work and turnarounds and so on, we have very special requirements because there are a lot of more workers on your site than in your common business days. So the potential for accidents will increase dramatically. Especially when you think about the contractors that come to your plant, they don't working there all the year. So they are new with your processes and they need to be trained. The human factor is also a very important point. With the number of increasing workers in a very short time on a limited area, the potential of accidents and so on will raise up dramatically. So these persons have to be familiar with your local requirements. That's one of the most important things. And from my point of view, that's the basic of all. So the training and getting them familiar with your processes is the basis of everything that comes after that. In the last presentation in the module 3, we always give you a few informations about the risk, where they come from. And in the first slide, I like to give you a small review to that. So when does the risk exist? For example, injuries caused by falling or radiation. Distracted by loud noise is also a very important point, because if you think about maintenance work and everything is loud in your surrounding area, and a distraction by loud noise could be all the time. Energized by electrical equipment, also important. And now we get one of our focus topics, lack of oxygen suffocation. So if you think about rooms or confined spaces, this is always a very important topic. Explosion, of course, we hope nobody will experience that. And also the inhalation of toxic and gases poisoning is very important for the maintenance work, because you interrupt your working process and you handle with toxic and hazardous materials, and these could come out and maybe harm someone. On the last module, we did a very detailed view to all of these risk assessments and the fundamentals. And today I colored it green. We want to focus on this topic because this is related to the gassing and asphyxiation. We are talking about chemical hazardous substance that comes with the inhalation into your body and harm you there. But at first, I like to give you also a small chart, these are the top 9 causes for fatalities in the steel industries in the years 2017 until 2022. And there you can see the top 3 causes. Fall from height. You may heard a lot of this topic in the last year. And moving machinery, so mechanical hazards, also one of the most important points. And on the 3rd place, we find our topic today, gassing and asphyxiation. So this is very important for your daily work, and especially for your work in at maintenance time. So let's get a deeper sight into that. The risk of gases and vapors. We have 3 different kinds of them. The danger of poisoning by toxic gases, for example. You can see them on these small symbol on every vessel or container. And for example, we are talking about carbon monoxide, chlorine, H2S, and so on. And they are measured in the parts per million level, ppm. Then we have the second part, the danger of explosion, which are made by flammable gases and vapors, for example, methane, and they are measured in volume percent. And the last part, or the 3rd part, the danger of suffocation. That's one of our topics today. For example, due to the absence of oxygen, and this is also measured in volume percent. Yeah, just a small view in our breathing apparatus. We inhale our normal air for the mouth or the nose, and that goes down into the lungs, the bronchitis, and the diaphragm. And the most of the hazardous toxic materials harm you there. So this is also a small repetition from the last time. I think the most important substances in the steel industry are for sure carbon monoxide, also sulfur dioxide, and we have an increased topic for explosive, for example, made by hydrogen. That's one we are facing in the future, and also today more and more. But also ammonia for transportation is an important topic that becomes more and more important. Yeah, clearance measurements. For common gases, so we have a lot of safety challenges in the steel industry. We have extreme temperatures. I told you noises, which are made by heavy machineries, for example, and the steel is produced under some of the toughest conditions. That's nothing that I could tell you new. You are working with all of this every day, so you are the experts in how to produce steel. And carbon monoxide, that's one of the greatest dangers, of the most dangerous substances that we are facing in the steel industry. Because every fire, every production step will produce carbon monoxide. But what makes it so dangerous? Carbon monoxide is not perceived by human senses, as it appears colorless and odorless, so you can't odor it. Nevertheless, it's very toxic and highly flammable, so that's something that you have to know. And yeah, one breath in, CO attached to red blood cells, suppressing the body's oxygen intake, and therefore we need a continuous monitoring for carbon monoxide of our ambient air and in the personal protective equipment. That is one of the essential things that you should thinking about. So we are talking about short time exposure limits if we want to measure substances, and also long time exposure limits for nearly one working shift. So that's about 8 hours. But the short time exposure limits, they are defined with 15 minutes. And there you have the stale value. Yes, that's the maximum concentration that is allowed by the government rules for 15 minutes. So if you are in contact with these kind of concentrations, after that, a rest of minimum 60 minutes, and then you can work again. So this is calculated with 4 times within one work shift. So you get also your 8 hours working time. The government rules are quite different all over the world. So this is just an overview that we have different regulatories in different countries. For example, in Germany, we have a lot of rules and regulations. For example, something that calls Arbeitsschutzgesetz. And one very important norm is the TRGS 900. There are the concentrations that are important for the LTV values and also for the STEL values. And for example, in the US, you have the NIOSH, the OSHA, and also the ISO regulations. Okay, but let's think about where all these toxic substances come from. So we have 4 different sources that they come from. So the first one is the dangerous substances come from the process itself. So if you produce something, if you burn something, then you produce, for example, carbon monoxide, or if you or sulfur dioxide or whatever. So out of the processes, this is one source for dangerous and toxic materials. But you can also produce dangerous concentrations with the working process. If you're thinking about welding, for example, you could produce carbon monoxide. So that's the second source where toxic materials can come from and influence your breathing. And also from external processes, maybe if you think about that you have a maintenance work just in one place of your site, and the other places are still in production process, and maybe they have leakage or something, then the working places in the surrounded area could be in contact with that and could be in danger of the leakage with the toxic material. And the fourth one, I already teased it now, is the leakage detection. So like you can see here in the picture, if we are working in a vessel, here we have a confined space, and this person is also well equipped with a protection suit and breathing apparatus, and there comes a toxic material out. The people in the surrounding area have to go away because we have a toxic area that could harm them. So they pull over their rescue mask and go to the safe place over there. On the next slides, I like to tell you something about how we could reduce these hazards. And this I would like to show you on a practical example. So from the planning of the turnaround to the maintenance work itself, to go back to the production process. So we come from the operational production mode in your steel industry. So we have dangers like heat, noises, gases like carbon monoxide, and therefore you have your fixed gas detection devices, for example, with this is also part of the fixed gas detection system, and you do your daily work, daily business with well-trained personnel. That's the situation you are very familiar with. And then you are thinking about maintenance work. We have to plan the task for the maintenance work, maybe for a turnaround from the whole site. And therefore, we have to identify critical maintenance points, construction projects, or different vessels or pipes that have to be maintained. And this is a step where you always do the tender for construction companies, for example. In the next step, it's also the task planning for the maintenance work. You have to talk about the turnaround or the maintenance work with your local equipment. For example, your fire brigade, your permit office has to be trained and informed about the maintenance work. And maybe a long time before you start your maintenance work, you need additional material for different preparation work, for example, and therefore, for example, you need a rental shop for different safety equipment like breathing apparatus or additional gas measurement device that you usually don't use in your daily business. So the infrastructural planning is very important, and the training for the internal persons. After that, we are going over to the plant preparation. So one of the most important steps to have fast maintenance work after that is to prepare the clearance measuring. So maybe you use an electronic permit office, and therefore maybe you need a plant preparation for the measurement points by QR codes or whatever. So that's something you can do a long time before you do the maintenance work. You can plan it, and and you can also plan the working permits for them. On this step, it's very important that you're thinking about your dangers that coming up with your maintenance work, and therefore you always need solutions, how we can solve this and how we can face them. And for that, I want to remind you about the ERIC-PD, so the elimination of the hazards, or if you can't eliminate them, you can replace it or reduce the hazard situation. Or the isolation is the next step, and also, for example, to isolate the people from the hazard in a time period, or on the time period, for example. And the administrative measures are one example for the controlling point, and the last one with the lowest level of influence is the protection, the PPE, and the discipline of the workers itself. So the most important and most effective point is the elimination and the replacing or reducing of the hazards. And therefore, like I told you, clearance measurements are very important. And for clearance measurement, you have to make sure that your gas measurements are equipped with the right sensors, for example, and that they are well tested and equipped when you need them. And please remember the dangers: suffocation, explosion, and also poisoning. They are very important to have the right planning for your clearance measurement. And here on the right side, you can see maybe one example for CSE working permission. If you can't read it right now, that's no problem. You get all the information and the slides afterwards so you can read and train them. But let's go further with our turnaround planning. The next step after we planned our maintenance work is to prepare the work itself. For example, training. You trained your own personnel in the last step, and now it's time to train the contractors that come to your construction site to give you support for your maintenance work. And for that, first priority is always safety. One of these points is how to handle with gas measuring devices. So also the personal protective devices, how to wear them, how to switch them on, to switch them off, do the daily bump test. That's all things you have to train your contractors that come to your construction site. And now we are on the point that the turnaround or the maintenance work will start. So you can see it on the right side here of the slide. The personnel comes to your construction site and need safety equipment, for example, the gas monitors. And they can get them on the safety shop, for example. Maybe you make the rule that you want to do an alcohol or drug testing in front of the work. So that's also one possibility to make sure that everybody is fit when you want to start the work on your construction site. And here on the top, you can see one of the most important things, the training right before they want to start the work. So the introduction in their working process and working step should be done in the field, right in front of the working points, to show them everything, to show the escape places, to show them where they have to work, what they have to do. And yeah, that's one of the basic and most important things to make sure that they can work safely. And for this, one important thing is lockout, tagout. You always know the procedure. You should have a great care, should be taken that all isolation systems are kept in place until all persons have left the confined spaces. So in this part, just make sure that that's one point on the next slide here. Verify the lockout, the test machinery to make sure it can't start up, for example. And after that, attach the lock and tagout devices so that nothing can start up again. The isolation of the energy is also one part of this procedure. Isolate all energy sources by blocking, bleeding, and venting. Stored energy as found in springs, hydraulic, and pneumatic system, you already know that. The shutdown equipment should be right in place. And the last step, also very important, is that you inform and notify the employees. And on this step, it's also important to train your contractor people and also your own people about safety culture. A safety culture usually starts with the first training to give them the advices, maybe 10 rules. These are just examples, but they are quite well for every production site and every turnaround. So the first point is you are responsible for your own safety and for everybody else in your surrounding area. And the second one, for example, wear your protective equipment that is necessary for your job. And usually on all working steps, a gassing monitor is one of these. Yeah, now everything can start. For example, confined space works or working in confined spaces. We talked about that a lot in the module 3, and this here I just want to remind you about the module 3. So you need a clearance measuring before you start the work, and you also need a continuous measuring when you do your work to make sure that there's no toxic atmosphere coming up in your vessels and containers. And also make sure that you have the right escape equipment, for example, a fire extinguisher and something else. The tripod, for example, that you can see here on the top. This is also very important, working in potentially dangerous areas. I think you know a lot of that. And one point I want to make is that the responsibility for the working is on the working coordinator. So that's also one reason I told you a few slides before that the training and introduction in the working place is so important. Please make sure that you have the right people on the right place, and because it's your responsibility. If somebody gets hurt there, it's also your responsibility, and yeah, you have to take care of them. So you can see here, potentially dangerous areas, a lot of people working in a very small area. You have somebody here on the right who's working in height position, and he could influence the work from this person, for example. If something fell down, it could hurt him. And on the left side, you have something or somebody who's working with heavy machinery and under a breathing apparatus, so that's a very hard work. And of course, for the area monitoring, for example, the X-zones are very important. This is one I want to focus you, also very important, near-miss reports, because that's the point. Nothing happened so far, but for example, somebody slipped but don't harmed. And this have to be documented because we want to learn of it and want to improve our safety culture with it. So this is one of the basics. The next step, tracking working process, also very important. The clearance of working processes and the control of that has to be done by a plant operator from your side, so that you can make sure that everything is right in place and well worked. And now we can go back to our production. After we controlled everything, therefore it's common business that we have control protocols from the manufacturer, and to make sure that everything is rebuilt. For example, the lockout tagout system I told you before, and a lot of companies go over from low tow to low tow. So that's a lockout, tagout, and tryout, and to have higher safety level before starting the system again. If everything is right in place and controlled and also documented, you can put pressure again on your system to come back to your normal working procedure. And in the third part of my presentation, I like to give you a small view into the future, what's coming up, how we could support you in your steel industry with digital solutions. And therefore, I like to introduce one of our digital solutions, the ConHub, the Connectivity Hub. It is a platform that consists of a web-based front end and a cloud back end, and the Gas Detection Connect system, GDC, offers both assets management and live monitoring as a cloud platform. Currently, all devices are gradually being equipped with Bluetooth interfaces, so that you can see here the smart devices, Bluetooth interfaces, and these devices send directly back to the cloud, and they are also planned for the next steps. And they are tested, for example, on the safety shop, and also documented. And you can have all these informations in the cloud backend over the GDC platform. But there's quite a challenge because you have so many devices in a very small area, and a solution for that is needed that does not require explosive protected smartphones, because usually they have a Bluetooth connection, but we also have the Bluetooth connection in our devices for the employees and contractors, and the solution should also work for single gas detectors. And of course, the area monitoring. And the live monitoring should be possible for a reasonable price, of course. This device is not intended to monitor individually workers. It's meant to give a deeper insight into a vulnerable area. So a single connectivity hub can forward the data to the devices in this area, for example, all of these ones. So what it is for? It is for the use in potentially hazardous areas, like I told you a few slides before, and in areas with maintenance activities, or also on accident sites. So we can use it nearly everywhere. So the ConHub is for advanced area monitoring in areas where it really matters and where you need it. So the most important advantages for this system: we have a new advanced area monitoring. We have no distributive technology. We building up an existing infrastructure that is still usable. We have no user interaction required, so you don't need any kind of very intensive training, so a low training effort required. We have a trade union, works council friendly, optimizing operating costs through a pay-per-use in the live monitoring, and we have one unique type for all the applications you need in your maintenance work. Okay, so for the next slide, what's coming up, I like to hand over to Oliver again.
Thank you, René, and thank you for this great overview. And me, I personally like the digitalization part because this is getting more and more relevant. And in the end, it's helping us to make processes easier, especially when you have different companies involved. And here the communication part might be difficult. And if you have digital processes supporting it, having quite easy to handle for everybody, then in the end also the safety will increase in parallel with the efficiency. So great thing, and yeah, perhaps this is the part we should have another deep dive on. we will see, depending also on your feedback. And for all of you who said, okay, very good overview, but we need more details, we want to have a deeper dive on it, then I can tell you that there are different options for you now. So first of all, I would like to remind you of the webinar series, and there have been already some webinars recorded, so they are already available on the website of World Steel and at the Steel University. Today's webinar will be there available soon. And for the next webinar, we will have a deeper dive into the topic of mobile gas detection and especially the usage. So how to use them properly, how to avoid mistakes, and how to have it in a safe manner. So that's coming up soon. Then I recommend you to stay in touch with Renee directly. So Renee, there is your email address available, and also a QR code if you just come a bit closer to me. Okay. Thank you to our back office here. So just scan the QR code, and then you will get access to the LinkedIn profile of Renee. And of course, third option might be to get in touch with our colleagues from all over the world. So we would be happy to assist you here to get you to the right place and then get local support by our organization. And last but not least, time for your questions. So there are some minutes left, and that's the time where I would like to hand over back to Andrew to start the FAQ session.
Thank you, Oliver, and thank you, Renee, for a fascinating presentation. And I quite agree. I think the interface between emerging digital technologies and AI going forward is going to be really interesting to see how that enhances our ability to improve our safety performance. It really is a fascinating topic that I'm sure we will end up talking a lot more about in the coming years. Today, we have a few questions which I would like to pose for you guys. I guess if you have any further questions, please type them into the Q&A box, or that's better than the chat. The Q&A box will be the place to put them, because then they are recorded. First question, gas detection equipment is clearly a vital control. And what would be the main causes of failure if you're using gas detection equipment during your maintenance work? What are the risks that people need to be attuned to?
Yeah, good question. I think you are the right one to answer.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. There are different reasons that we have to focus on. On the one side, of course, one risk could be that you have not the right sensors, not the right gas measurement devices that you need for your maintenance work, for example. So if you have the wrong sensors for the wrong target substances, you can't measure the right substances that you are interested in. So this could be one risk with our gas equipment. And of course, another one, it's quite in the same direction. It's the testing and the calibration of the devices. So please make sure that your devices are calibrated right with the right alarm values, and also a daily bump test is required. So, and there's also one possibility, if you want to do that, or if you don't want to do that on your own, we can also support you for that with a rental shop, or so we can make sure that your equipment is well tested and calibrated for the right working process.
And I would like to add one point, and that's the awareness that the gas detection device might be your life insurance. And this is a topic we are working on day by day, convincing the people that this is your life insurance. So this is also referring to our next webinar series, where we have exactly on this topic a deeper dive and if you're interested, please feel free to join.
Fantastic. I think that those are great points, especially with maintenance happening not as often or as frequent as operations. There's potentially a real risk that those sort of extra gas detection equipment end up in a cupboard or a drawer and they're pulled out again for the next major job without that calibration. So I think that's a great point. Another issue that you talked about and has come up in the questions is around contractors. I mean, contractors are I think, a vulnerable community within the steel industry. They suffer disproportionately from serious and fatal incidents. Their familiarity with our plants, if they're coming in for specific maintenance jobs, won't be as high as those who are there all the time. So what can we do as an industry in this area, I guess, to optimize that relationship and reduce the risks that our contractors will face?
Yeah, that's a good question, and one of the biggest topics that we are facing now and also in the future, because well-trained people and well-trained workers are not so often available that you need them, but we can give you support of that with digital solutions, for example. So if you're thinking about the small introduction of the ConHub, that's one interesting point that we have to, or that we could think about, that you have an asset management, that you know where are your workers are and what kind of values are they exposed to in the last days, for example. And therefore you can make sure that the workplace is safe, or maybe we have a leakage and this will be detected by an area monitoring. You can see it right on time in your digital solution from the GDC platform, for example. So the digital solutions are one of the basics that we have to talk about to make this situation safer.
Yes, of course. Just one additional comment. It's a question of communication, and it seems from time to time, it seems to be a bit ridiculous to talk about all the small bits and pieces, but in the end, they are safety relevant. And so the part of communication training is key, the awareness, safety culture. And if this is a holistic approach, then I'm quite sure that even the complexity of different third-party companies involved can be mitigated.
Fantastic. I have another question. A lot of the risks that you guys talk about relate to the release of toxic gases or asphyxiant, and that made me think about process safety, and particularly the sort of interface between maintenance and process safety, because it's a time when things aren't operating really as they usually are when the plant is running. I just wonder if you have any thoughts on how, I guess, the importance of and how you can go around making sure that maintenance and the thoughts of unusual operation really features in your process safety planning.
Yeah, I think you touched the point, Andrew. So might be a big gap between operational work and maintenance work that has to be filled. And if you have the right processes in daily operation, then I think you are on a good track to have it for maintenance as well. But as we said today, the challenges might be different, and that's why it's necessary to have a right picture of the special risk in maintenance work. But it would be best way to fit both worlds together.
Yeah. And also, please make sure that you train the people that come in addition for the maintenance work to your daily procedures. That's and the hazards, they are maybe very special for you, and I think that's an important point to bring these both worlds together.
No, I agree entirely. I mean, one of the points that we've been making strongly as World Steel is the importance of treating your contractors, the same way you treat your own people in terms of their training, their induction, your monitoring. It's really important. And the other aspect that made me think from familial comment is around the difference between workers designed and workers done. Something again we found ourselves talking about the way people really behave in the workplace. So understanding potential gaps there strikes me as an important opportunity to reduce risk. Okay, thank you, chaps. I don't see any further questions, so this seems a good a time as any to wrap things up. Thank you, everybody, for participating in our webinar today. As Oliver pointed out, we have another webinar to come, which I believe is very early in October, which will be on mobile gas detection devices, your life insurance. So we're looking forward to that. We'll be here, same time, same place. So we look forward to talking to you again and really bringing this initial webinar series to a close and continuing this conversation. So thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Renee, and thank you, everybody who's been participating today.
Thank you, and see you all back again soon.